On today's episode of Scammers Busted, a man has been sent to prison in the United States for a large-scale inheritance scam that stole millions from the US government. Meanwhile, in Oyo State, Nigeria, a serial fraudster has been sent to over 6 decades in prison for being the mastermind of an investment fraud that stole billions of naira. But first, two prominent Nigerians, Oba Joseph Oloyede, the Akpetu of Ikpetumodu, and Pastor Edward Oluwasomi, have pleaded guilty to a $4.2 million COVID-19 relief fraud in the United States. Apparently, during the COVID-19 pandemic, these two men used their companies to file fake applications in order to receive business relief funds. These funds were meant for businesses struggling to survive during the pandemic. Instead, Oba Joseph and Pastor Edward used the money to buy properties and live lavish lifestyles. Eventually, Pastor Edward, who was residing in the US at the time, was arrested at his residence, while Oba Joseph was arrested at the airport when he traveled from Nigeria to the United States to see his family. Now that the two men have pleaded guilty, they wait for the judgment day on July 2nd, 2025, when their fate will be decided. It's unfortunate that those expected to lead by example are the ones tarnishing their nation's image and disgracing their profession. Choose integrity. Crime only leads to the heavy cost of imprisonment. 36-year-old Okezie Bonaventure Ogbata has been sentenced to over 8 years in a US prison for running a sophisticated, large-scale inheritance scam. It all started with a letter. Okezie sent out very convincing letters to hundreds of elderly Americans, claiming he was writing from a bank in Spain. He told his victims that their long-lost relatives had left them massive inheritances in Spain. Victims were asked to pay for fake delivery fees, taxes, and legal clearances in order to receive their inheritances. Okezie and his partners ran this operation for years, stealing over $6 million from over 400 victims in the US. Eventually, on April 25, 2025, Okezie Bonaventure Ogbata was sentenced to 97 months in prison. But he wasn't alone. Emmanuel Samuel was sentenced to 6 years and 8 months in prison. Jerry Chuks was sentenced to 7 years and 2 months. Iheanichukwu Jonathan Abraham, 7 years and 5 months. And Prince Amos Oke was also sentenced to 7 years and 5 months in prison. Finally, on April 28, 2025, a serial fraudster, Olaniyan Gbenga Amos, was sentenced to over 60 years in prison for investment fraud. Apparently, Gbenga used a fraudulent company called Crime Alert Security Network to lure in hundreds of victims with sweet talks and fake promises of 30% return on investment in just 6 weeks. He managed to steal over 1 billion naira through this scheme before vanishing into thin air. Sometime in 2022, the EFCC caught wind of the scam and arrested Gbenga. He was dragged to the Oyo State High Court in Ibadan afterwards for prosecution. Last week, justice finally caught up with Gbenga when he was found guilty on 9 out of 30 counts and sentenced to 63 years in prison, although the sentences will run concurrently, reducing his actual time behind bars. What's even more shocking is that this is not Gbenga's first time in jail. He has already been sentenced to 75 years in prison for a separate case back in December 2023, and is still facing 2 more trials in federal high courts. Please, always verify investment platforms. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Sadly, while the courts have ordered restitution, many victims may never get their money back. And that's it, guys. If you found these stories interesting, please like and subscribe. It helps this channel grow. Thank you and see you next time. Remember, crime doesn't pay. Stay safe.